Hello everybody and welcome to tonight's live stream. There we go. It wouldn't be a live stream if it wasn't a little audio hiccup at the start. Welcome tonight to the Train Sim World Roadmap live stream. I am as ever joined by my partner in crime, Matt Pedleston. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much, JD. It's good to be here.
It's good to be back. I mean, I know we do these monthly, but it's always nice to kind of get an opportunity to jump in, talk about some of the things that the team are working on, and also be able to, I expect, kind of pick your brain a little bit. We get the opportunity to chat a little bit in the office and when we're sort of talking about our day-to-day lives and stuff, but it's really good to be able to drill into some of the discussion points that we know some of the particularly some of the community are talking about, as well as also talking about obviously lots of things that are going on and lots of releases that are coming up too. So we have released this month's roadmap, March's roadmap, and it's a bit of a stonker. I think I counted it about 5,757 words at last count, so quite a long one, but there's lots and lots and lots of stuff in there, and we'll go through pretty much all of that over the course of the evening. But just as a quick TLDW summary, we have Linke Rheinstrecke information, we have Niddertalbahn, we have Midland Main Line, we've got West Cornwall Local Steam Railtour, we have Loco Add-on Bundle 2, which is a new addition to the roadmap this time round. We also have some information for you on Edinburgh-Glasgow patch that went live today, the US post-release content post-release patch. We have Add-ons Manager discussion. We have hopefully the last time we'll ever have to talk about Add-ons Manager, but red lights, special projects, and partner program bits and pieces, as well as some time for some AOB bits and some Q&A at the end too. So quite a lot to go through tonight. What we're going to do just to kick things off, just so that you can see where we're coming from, is we'll show you what the roadmap looks like for March. And there are a couple of things that I just want to point out straight away. I'm aware that it says March. We're going to try and get that changed. Second of all, the release schedule is slightly wrong on the Dovetail Games releases side of things. We expect Linke Rheinstrecke to release prior to the Loco add-on bundle, so that will be amended and we'll put that live tomorrow. But as you can see on there, we've got everything on there that we've added to the roadmap. Some people are saying it's an unreadable font. I disagree, but I think it's safe. If you want to drill into this in a little bit more information, then obviously it is on the roadmap in a slightly more list-based form, if you want to check out the article itself. So let's go back to our cams, shall we? And talk initially. In fact, actually, no. Before we go into the Linke Rheinstrecke information, a little bit of admin before we get started. As ever, I bet you've missed the admin side of things, and what I'm talking about is the stream on Thursday, which actually will not have an admin section because I'm not on it. But it is the Linke Rheinstrecke preview stream on Thursday at 1900 UTC. It will be with Matt, Alex, and with Lucas. So I think that's Lucas's first live stream since we did Castle Würzburg for TSW3.
Yeah. It's mostly going to be Alex and Lucas, I think. To be fair,
I think they're probably the ones that are going to hold things up.
In and cause problems and trouble and stuff.
Yeah, so that will be on Thursday. So we've opened up a forum thread for suggestions, requests, and questions about the route. So we're not going to go into too much detail today about Linke Rheinstrecke because we obviously have the preview going live on Thursday, where we'll cover quite a lot of the information in there. Should we go on to Linke Rheinstrecke, go into a little bit of an introduction, talk a little bit about it? Because obviously we talked about it during the summit live stream. But we haven't really touched on it since, and we've been able to provide a little bit more information about what you can expect from the route on the roadmap this time round. So a little bit of a quick summary. You've got the rolling stock is the DBBR 103 in the Trans-Europe Express livery, the 110.3 in Deutsche Bahn Orient red livery. You've got the AVMZ and BVMZ IC coaches with the red band, N-Wagons, and the Karlsruhe Kopf cab car in the white and mint livery. Oh, I love the white and mint livery. And the Shimzu 708 and the Tags 959 freight wagon. So those are all the rolling stock that come with the route in various different forms. And what we're going to do is we've got a little, as ever, a pictorial depiction of some of the content as well. It's not quite a slideshow, Matt, don't worry, but we'll be talking about some of this as we go through it. So I'm just going to quickly flick over to the bits and pieces. Doesn't that look nice?
The castles are an epic feature on this route. It's got such a classy feel to it, and I'm really loving the 110 in the Orient Red actually.
Yeah, I mean, obviously flicked over and these things are sort of running in the background. It would have been nice to have flicked over straight away to the 103, but obviously we've got the 110.3 there. But yeah, the background and the backdrop look stunning already, and I know that obviously that is a big feature of this route too. We've got the route map here as well. That's, again, if you want to dive a little bit more into that, that is on the roadmap too. If you want to check that out and sort of check out where, if you're a local, where your local station is, or what's going to be covered throughout the course of the add-on. So how are you feeling about Linke Rheinstrecke, Matt? I think it's one of those things which it's one of the first times we've done sort of a slightly older German piece of content. It's not uncharted territory for us, but it's something that's different and something that we've perhaps not done in this way before. How are you feeling about it?
Good. It's obviously Lucas has been driving this one with the team, and 100% confident because Lucas knows what he and the German community really want. That's what I'm really I'm looking forward to seeing that progress. But this has always been a bit of a journey for us because we wanted to start doing older content. We got a lot of requests for older content, and when so we sort of had a bit of a plan for Bremen would take us a little bit older and get us the BR110, and then we go a little bit further back and with the left Rhine, which then used the 110 and so forth. So as you start, changing eras, you sort of have to reset on stock. So it's been about changing era slowly so that we can gradually build up some stock to help us, and that allowed us to get to this point. So because the left Rhine was kind of like where we wanted to get to. It's kind of really, really famous bit of railway. And just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's the journey as you go up the line because you're in the valley. When it's quite a steep valley, it's nothing subtle about this valley, and so it's a really, and as you're travelling along the riverside, it's just a beautiful ride the entire way up. So it's I'm really looking forward to this one.
I think Lucas counted 24 castles on the route as well, which is again, I think it's a big part of that kind of part of German countryside, and sort of having all of those things on the horizon, I think will be really impressive. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it handles on the preview stream as well.
Well, it's also when we were talking about when we had a conversation we had earlier on. It's not just about the castles; it's about the in quotes "castly bits." You know, there's lots of walls and bits of walls and so forth. So it's this is. There's also the valley sides are quite well known for the vineyards and so forth, where the vines are, where the wine is grown, grapes, and sort of getting those represented will give this route quite an interesting feel as well.
Yeah, the vines growing wine on the Rhine.
That's the one.
I can see that coming into. We can make a poem for the release.
It's a top 10 song. Come on.
So just talking a little bit about the services as well. So we've got the list of services that are coming with the route. So with the 103's got 111 playable services. We know there are a lot of people that are really excited about the 103. So hopefully that is to your taste. The 110.3 has 100 playable services, and the 463 cab car has 39 playable services. There are a couple of layers as well. The ICE one from Castle Würzburg has 2 services on the route, but also, and we'll come on to this a little bit when we talk about Niddertalbahn. Niddertalbahn, the 628 has 49 services as well, but those will be available with the release of Niddertalbahn if you own Niddertalbahn as well. So yeah, there's a bit of overlap and interlocking between Niddertalbahn and Left Rhine, which is, I think, one of the reasons why we were so keen for these two to be kind of not released next to each other, but within close proximity to each other, because there is so much kind of interplay and I guess similarities is the wrong word, but they're kind of the same essence of route.
Yeah, absolutely. They do play off each other.
Brilliant. So yeah, and Linke Rheinstrecke, the 103 and the 110.3 will also layer onto Niddertalbahn as well, I believe, as AI traffic for Niddertalbahn. There is one thing that we do need to mention around Linke Rheinstrecke is the PIS on the route, and we wanted to try and make sure that we were as transparent as we could possibly be with this. And whilst we've endeavoured to be able to replicate that 1990s style PIS system for the route, we haven't been able to complete this to the level that we would want to be able to do for a route like this. So we made the tough decision to not include the PIS boards as part of this release. Because of some of the feedback that we'd seen around some of the American content that we'd released over the course of the last couple of months, and actually a selection of players were saying, well, we'd rather not have any if it's not going to be correct. So we made the decision that it will not launch with the PIS boards. Matt, is there anything you wanted to add to that at all, just in terms of rationale, or in terms of what the route will feel like as a result of that?
Well, I mean, obviously you're gonna miss the PIS. That's a big shame. But I think one of the things we decided was, so do you want to add the empty PIS boards, the blank unfunctioning PIS boards, or leave them without? And we decided that without was better, because it's with them there but blank, it looks wrong and broken effectively because they don't work. So we've decided to leave them out completely. It's I think it's quite a different system. It's the old clappy system with the flappy board thing. There is actually a name for it that's related to that, and I can't remember what it is.
Put there, Matt.
Oh, it's just the English is working well with me tonight. But it's this where they flap over the things. So it's a set of oh, leave me alone. There's a set of animations and so forth that's and control of it that's quite a lot more complicated than anything we've done actually with the PIS. So there's a bit of R&D for us to figure out what happens there. If there's any advancement on that, we'll let you know. But we're not promising anything in terms of updates to this. Expect it to stay as it is.
I understand. Obviously, there'll be players that are disappointed with that, and that's absolutely fine. We wouldn't expect that to be the case, but the situation, we wanted to be just transparent as we can be, because one of the things that also is worth noting is that pre-order will be available from Thursday as well. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had as much information as they could do before anybody wanted to kind of commit any emotional pull to the route, or also any financial spend as well. Cool. There have been a couple of questions around Linke Rheinstrecke, which I think are relevant for the roadmap. What we are going to ask people to do is there is a question thread for the live stream on Thursday, and if you do have any more specific Linke Rheinstrecke questions, then put them in there, because I think Lucas is probably better equipped to be able to answer a couple of those questions than perhaps me and Matt will be tonight.
Yeah.
But Zimph asks, when you were talking about the backdating of some of the German content and being able to kind of almost get there gradually, does that mean that the following German routes will be even older, or will we go back to modern content as well?
I guess we'll find out.
I don't even know why I asked that question, to be honest with you. I guess to kind of expand on what Matt said, it is kind of we have got an opportunity.
I don't want to give away the plans.
Now we've got an opportunity now. We've got we've got a broader range of times and eras that we could possibly choose from when we're selecting new content, which we perhaps wouldn't have had if Linke Rheinstrecke wasn't a thing, or Niddertalbahn weren't a thing. So, I mean, watch this space. But when we have more information for you, it's not on the roadmap as it stands.
Do give us feedback on what you like, what you think we could do better on in our older routes compared to our newer ones. We've got a good sense of how much of what you like and what you think we could do better on the modern German routes. So, it's let's get the same level of feedback on this, and then we can use that to develop how we go forward.
Yeah, and I guess kind of a follow-on from, or not necessarily a follow-on, but Lord Vulture asks, was there any reason why we didn't add an older version of the 155 as the 110 was not a regular freight loco?
Again, Lucas question, but
okay.
I suspect it's just down to we always, I think we're using the 110 as a freight loco to add freight service onto it. The goal was to bring the 103 as kind of the feature train to this, and we also wanted to bring get the coaches over to the Mint end wagons, get the red coaches on the 103. Actually, taking the 155 and backdating it is probably, I think I know roughly what that would be, and these things never end up being as simple as you think. They end up being quite complex. So while it's not a regular freight loco, it does serve the role as a freight loco, and maybe in the future there might be opportunities then to bring in better. I know Lucas and I have been discussing about freight possibilities in the future as well, because I'm a big freight fan. I love driving freight trains, so we've been discussing what they might look like, well, again, we'll see what the fruits of those discussions are in the future.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm just going to make another sort of plug for the live stream on Thursday. So that's 1900 hours UTC on this channel and on our Twitch channel, or on our YouTube channel, wherever you're watching. And that will be the preview stream for Linke Rheinstrecke. I'm really looking forward to it. I might actually watch it as a viewer rather than as a person taking part on a live stream. I can't wait. It's going to be a good
now
one.
We can't take the Mickey out of JD.
I can heckle from the sidelines. Alex, why are you not doing that? Alex, why are you doing this? I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, let's go back to the two-cam, because obviously that's not the only thing that we've been talking about on the roadmap. We've also been, whilst we're on the subject of 90s German content, we've also been talking about Niddertalbahn as well. Now, Niddertalbahn has been something that I think a few players have been aware of for a little while, but we wanted to try and make sure that whilst we were discussing it and whilst we were kind of getting it to the forefront of where we needed it to be, we were quiet, and we wanted to be able to provide something tangible with when we kind of properly announced it in the summit live stream. And again, we've kind of been a little bit quiet on it since then, but the roadmap, we were able to speak to the TSG team. They gave us quite a lot of information in an interview format, and I'd say if you really, I'm going to say this quite a few times over the course of the stream, because there's quite a lot of content in the roadmap that we're not going to be able to talk about tonight, and a lot of nuance. But we did an interview with them, which is on that roadmap, and it kind of gives a little bit more flavour to what the content is going to be. We're going to kind of skirt over it a little bit tonight with some nice pictures, but there is a lot of stuff that's included in that interview, which has a lot more context. So let's talk about some nice, pretty pictures, shall we? So let's go into the transition. This is Stockheim Station, which is one of the ends of the line, but
it's the northeastern end of the line, if my geography serves me.
Yeah. Oh, and look, Oh, that's something that we've not talked about
This is
before,
not
isn't
the
it?
363 that you're thinking of. This is the 365, which is a variation of the 363. And it's had some model differences compared to the 363, and yeah, you'll be using this in a number of functions. But yeah, it's again, I've always liked the 363. It's fun to drive, and the 365 is more of that, with some subtle variations. And we're a little bit older in time, and well, safety systems are not quite the same.
So it's set in 1992. And the route has 14 stations, but it's quite a sedately paced, route, single track, and the Loco isn't the most powerful. Lucas told me as well, so it's quite a different driving experience in terms of sort of how you would be operating it and the speeds that it can get up to, and how long it might take you to get from A to B. So I think one of the things that we're really keen to get across with Niddertalbahn is the scenery, the moments in time, the things that you can spot and pick out on as you're driving by, because it's quite rich with this particular route. And I'm sure again Lucas can wax lyrical about it when we get him on the live stream to do a preview with it. But Matt, what are your thoughts on Niddertalbahn?
It's a very different pace of route to anything that's been released to date, really. I mean, this DMU is quite fun to drive. It's quite it's a bit sluggish. It's old. It's slow, but it works well. It sounds great. Sounds like a truck engine. It's superb. But yeah, you are. It's not a particularly slow route. You're not trucking along at 20 miles an hour or something. You are driving at sort of sensible speed, so you're not going to get bored. But it is a windy single track branch line, so you're going to have that kind of an experience. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really interesting ride, and I know that Lucas and the team have come up with some really different, I'll put it that way, ideas for the scenarios. There's some really fun stuff that they've come up with, really unusual concepts for scenarios that I think people are going to be surprised by. Actually, it's brilliantly done. I mean, look at this screenshot. This one in the trees. Absolutely love this screenshot.
They were very coy when I asked them about it as part of the interview. They said, I think something from the future or something like that they'd mentioned, but I'll leave it like that.
Scenario is bonkers. It's brilliant.
A couple of other things that are worth mentioning around Niddertalbahn. We've talked about the left Rhine or Linke Rheinstrecke layers that come onto this. So the 103 and the 110.3 will layer on for AI traffic to this route. There's manual activation of level crossings on this route as well. AI whistle boards, so the AI trains will now honk at the numerous whistle boards on the route as well. German semaphores. A lot of work went into the animation of this, Lucas was saying, so they hope that they'll show up often.
It's the first route with German semaphore signalling on it, so it's which is something that Lucas and the team developed pretty much from scratch. So yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, that manual activation of level crossings is funny, is really cool. You walk up to this little box on the side and you activate it with a key, and then that causes the gates to go down, and then you go back into your train and you drive across it. It's not on all level crossings, but it's the ability for you to do that as well. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I think it's one of those ones which lots of people are really going to like. There's a lot of little moments, I'd say moments again, where you're kind of looking at things and actually you can see things maybe you wouldn't normally see on other routes, because you're either going really quickly around something, or because you're perhaps not impelled to look into the distance. Well, they said that there's lots of little scenes to explore, and I think, as I say, there'll be a lot of Easter eggy style things, I would imagine, as you're going through the route too. One of the collectibles, I think, Celtic sculptures or something he was sort of talking about, which sounds intriguing.
Yeah, I know that they've had a lot of fun with the extra stuff. I think there's some walking points where you can go and explore as well. So no, this is not a drive it from end to end as fast as you can. This is have a nice lazy stroll down the route and just to take it in. You'll see that the approach that the team have used for building the route is unique. The route doesn't look like any of our routes. You can see that from the screenshots. This looks really cool. I really like what the team have done.
Awesome. Okay. Well, there will be a preview live stream for Niddertalbahn, but keep your eyes peeled for the Railbahn TV schedule for more information on that. We can't wait to be able to showcase with the TSG team what this is all about in action. So
someone's just asked a question that I thought was inevitable the minute you mentioned it. AI horns on trains.
Right, yeah.
It's a one-off feature that's been done on these trains. Whether it happens elsewhere or not there is no core system for this at this point. This has just been coded specifically into this route for these trains by this team. It's the complexity with horns being blown is that it varies at different times. On this route, you do actually blow your horn a lot, which is quite unusual for German route. Actually, in most cases, blowing your horn is absolute emergencies only in Germany. And there are different rules in the UK. There are enormously complicated compared to the UK and elsewhere rules in America, and so it's not a straightforward there's a marker, blow a horn, which is what this is doing, and it's perfect for this route, so it's really good to see. But no, this does not mean this appears on other routes at this point.
Yeah, cool. Okay, anything else on the Niddertalbahn, Matt, or shall we move on?
I think we can move on.
All right then, let's go back to the main cam and we'll talk a little bit about another partner program route. So we know there's a lot of excitement about Midland Main Line, and our friends at Skyhook are also equally as excited. They've kind of put a teaser out earlier for the 158 because we've not really had a chance to see that yet. We've seen the HST, but we've not seen the 158.
Well, we saw it a little tiny bit in the distance in the background if you really look squinted
little
and look carefully.
Little smidge. But here we go. Here it is in action. So there we are. This was taken by the Skyhook team, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, and sent through to us to share in the roadmap. Again, if you've followed them on socials, they'll be able to provide, I think, a lot more kind of tease content and little bits and bobs here and there. So if you're interested in getting that information first, then feel free to jump over to them. But of course, this is the 158. We know that a lot of people are really excited for the 158, and obviously the route in general. Matt, is there any kind of status updates from the Skyhook team that we can provide? Obviously, we did an interview with them on the roadmap, which goes into a few of the challenges they've experienced while building the route and some of the other unique features around it. But is there anything from a status update point of view that you want to share?
Other than Dev continues apace, they're being continually critical and re-reviewing what they're doing. They've already had one repass over the route, and revising and upgrading some of the stuff they've done. They're really keen for this to get to the level that everyone's expecting it to, and they're really excited by it as well. I think they're having more fun on this project. You can tell by the sort of how they're getting into it, and there's some really good involvement from the beta team involved with providing feedback to them. It's got a lot of buzz actually around this one, both in their team, within the beta community, and so forth. So I think this is it's going to be quite an exciting release actually.
Absolutely, and set in 2019. And some of the kind of features that you can expect to see throughout the route. You've got the Radcliffe Power Station, iconic. You've got Loughborough Brushworks, Red Hill Tunnel. All of those things will get an opportunity to show over the course of the coming weeks. So that, as I say, you are, and we'll obviously do a live stream preview with them as well. We've already secured Tom from Skyhook, who did the Horseshoe Curve preview way back when, to be able to do some a live stream preview with us, which we're really looking forward to too.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. Anything else on Midland Main Line, Matt?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. As I say, more will come in the next few weeks on the route, and as I say, we'll be able to show a little bit more as we go through. Back to 2Cam. It's quite an intensive stream for me on production tonight, I have to be honest.
Backwards,
forwards. Shall we talk West Cornwall Local Steam Railtour? I'm taking your nod as a yes.
Sure.
So, sure, JD. Okay, so again, one of these things that we talked about, I think, just before Christmas, and the Rivet team working on it and putting it together, and we obviously launched Edinburgh-Glasgow. There was quite a lot of post-release feedback for Edinburgh-Glasgow, and we'll come on to that in a little bit. There's a patch that's gone live for Edinburgh-Glasgow earlier today. What we wanted to do is be able to, and actually Rivet themselves wanted to be able to go into Edinburgh-Glasgow and take on some of that post-release feedback. So we've kind of held this release a little bit until we've been able to work out what that's all about and how and get that update out. So we are now in a position where we can talk a little bit more about West Cornwall Local Steam Railtour. So we've got some nice screenshots. This is going to be layered on, or this is going to be a kind of additional feature for the West Cornwall local route, as implied by the fact that it's West Cornwall Local Steam Railtour. But I'm just going to wait because there's an image that I don't want to show first of all because it doesn't really make sense without the context. So I'm just going to try and fill for a little bit while the slideshow updates. No, that's another one that requires a little bit of context.
Here we go.
So included in the pack there are 5 scenarios, 4 services additionally on West Cornwall Local as well, and the Jubilee that comes with this pack also layers onto Edinburgh-Glasgow as well, but you only need West Cornwall Local in which to have that layer enabled, so there's an additional bit of content onto West Cornwall Local as well. Sorry, Edinburgh-Glasgow too.
Yes, everyone who was looking for steam rail tours on Edinburgh-Glasgow, this is where they are.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's transition over now. So this is it in action. This is the LMS Jubilee, and it's looking mighty fine.
Yeah, the Crimson is probably has always been my favourite of the liveries, and yeah, it's an absolute treat.
Now you might see that we've kind of over-indexed here in a few types of different pictures, which are a little bit more fun and fancy free. There is a reason for that. There's a couple of festive scenarios that are also included within the coaches as well. So the coaches are wrapped up in Christmas lights. There's some lighting around the front of the train, and they're also available in that kind of festive theme with a little extra surprise hidden in the cab that will make you feel even more festive, which I think actually we've probably given away by the fact that we've shown the inside of the cab with some of these pictures. So it's a nice little additional thing if you're interested in the pack that you'll be able to use anytime, whether it's Christmas or it's not Christmas.
The festive trains are actually really good fun. They are really good fun, and because they covered the coaches in lights and as well as having the Loco with the neons on it. It's very nice, and it's really interesting, having these because the services and so forth, as well as the scenarios, being able to bring these trains onto what is quite a challenging route for steam engines. This is not a flat route, so it's quite a fun route to drive in a steam engine.
Yeah, so the Jubilee as well has an AWS system, speedometer. It's got an updated battery-powered tail light as well, which replaces the lanterns, and there's also custom headboard that you can toggle as well. So there's a little bit to play around with. As I said, there's 5 scenarios, 4 additional services, and there's also the layer that goes on to Edinburgh-Glasgow too. So quite a lot to getting stuck into with this. Do you want to talk about anything else, Matt, related to this pack, or are we happy there? I think
I think have we covered the 2 variations, because lots of screenshots of the Crimson. I don't think I've seen any screenshots of the black one. So there's the 2 variations, and you can see these lights, which are just a treat in the you drive a nighttime scenario with the festive train, and it's really fun. It's a really interesting pack. I like what they've done. Someone asked about, didn't think that Achieve steam trains had AWS. A modern steam train is required to have AWS, and the idea is that these are modern sort of 80s, 90s Penzance era rail tours, and so they would have, it's got the AWS on it, which just gives you a little bit of a different experience as well compared to what you would have had driving steam trains on a steam era route. Don't think about this is not trying to pretend it's back in the steam days. This is it's something a bit more modern. They, as you know from Grimble Crew, they didn't have speedometers either, so that has been added as well. It's the Jubilee, but it's a bit of a different Jubilee to what you've driven previously. So and it's like I said, it's a really fun route to drive it on. I think that's the black one actually. You just can't see it.
Yeah, and there's the 37 as well, which is obviously part of the West Cornwall Local. Bits and pieces. The other thing to note, there was a couple of questions about West Cornwall Local. There was an update today. A few scenery improvements, including I think they've remodeled Truro Cathedral, which should be good. But this route, as it stands, isn't going to be getting the new lighting or the updated skies as part of the TSW3 upgrades.
But we have made sure that all the festive lighting works on TOD 4. So we did make sure that. So if you want to scenario plan or something, putting the festive trains onto a TOD 4 route, that does work. It does auto adjust all the lights appropriately. So we made sure that works.
Cool. Okay, brilliant. And what I would say is, if you have questions around West Cornwall Local, it might be a good idea to. We're going to try and see if we can have some kind of a direct line to the Rivet team and to Jasper. So whether that's through a forum thread or whether it's through something else, we'll do our best to make sure that we're getting them on and being able to talk a little bit more detail about some of the things that have gone on with this particular piece of content. Okay, finally, in terms of the new bits, and this is the new one really, because this is the one that I think some people had an inkling of that it was a thing, but not what was included within it. So this is the new Loco add-on bundle. This is Loco add-on bundle 2, and it is coming to you. Actually, you know what? I'll go back to our two cams. So this is a new series of trains that you'll be able to bring onto Southeastern, Castle Würzburg and Cajon Pass. And they're going to be similar in vein to what we did with the first Loco add-on bundle, which included the RHTT, the Santa Fe F7 and the Dispaloc 182. And they're going to provide a similar kind of amount of gameplay. They're going to provide a similar kind of amount of variety to the individual routes themselves. But we have some pictures for you, and we're going to show you some of those pictures as it stands. We'll start off with the US content, which is the SD70 ACE, which is supporting the BNSF livery. Now, we're cycling through quite quickly here. We've got the ICE one with the green stripe livery.
This was their efficiency livery.
Yes. So this is a green initiative, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Pride livery, so the Railbow, which I very much enjoyed the name. 403, so that's the ICE3 for the Railbow. Obviously, we've seen a couple of sort of similar style liveries on Creators Club, which have been great. We're hoping that, as I say, if you're interested in this kind of thing, then these liveries are kind of at the level required of which you'd be obviously paying for the content. So we're hoping that these are kind of a step above. And finally, we have, and again, we'd love to be able to stop and pause right here, but we can't really. We have the UK content, which is going on to Southeastern, which is the where am I?
This is the Rail Operations Group Class 37.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't scroll down in my notes fast enough.
This actually is really interesting screenshot, because this shows you one of the key differences, because the 37, the ROG 37s have this brake changeover facility, the translator. So as you apply the brake on the 37, it translates the brake pressure into a step 1, step 2, step 3 emergency, which is then electrically sent to the multiple unit to then make it actually to apply its brakes in concert with the ones that you've got on the 37. So you've got that working translator in the cab actually sending the appropriate messages to the EMU.
Yeah, and it's obviously different to the other variants of the 37 as well, isn't it? So there's very distinct differences that have been made from
It's got a super distinctive livery for one thing, and there's been a bunch of model changes. I mean, the Delner coupling obviously is incredibly unique to that. But there's been a bunch of model changes. I don't think the livery is present actually in those screenshots. It's not ready yet. So it's where it looked great. But yeah, it's the big Euro Phoenix livery. They're very well known livery. So looking really hyped for showing it. I've seen early shots of it, and it's looking stunning. This is the one I'm really most looking forward to, because this is I remember actually watching these trains. What they used to do, there was a period where Southeastern were changing, rebranding their white 375s. There's a white 375 included in the pack as well. They were rebranding the white 375s to the blue 375s. So you'd have the ROG 37s hauling the white ones off, and then later on you'd have them hauling them back again blue. And there was quite an extended number of months where this was just a regular move that was happening. So, a number of us would go out and watch them going back, and they were always really, really cool to rail fans. Blowing the horns, doing all the Star Wars theme tunes on the horn as they go by. It was really good fun. I got a video of it on my YouTube channel as well. So I was really hyped that we could get this in there, and Rog have been really good to work with too.
Yeah, like us asked if we altered the shape of the 37 at all.
I know there's been a lot of model changes to it. So I haven't actually seen the finished shape to see where it ended up, because I think what you're referring to is the nose on the Tees Valley 37 wasn't quite right. Let me find out. Let me just say, assume not, and then if it is, we'll when we demo the pack, we'll just show you what it is. You can see what it is or isn't.
Yeah, and I know that James in the marketing team is particularly keen on this particular piece of content. So I would imagine we're probably going to have another article talking about the UK content as part of this, because obviously we haven't been able to show the livery itself tonight. So we'll make sure that we do that at least before.
So there's a couple of questions being asked about whether it can haul the 465s, which it can't because it's got a Delna coupling, not a tight lock coupling. That's a different thing. So this is only being modelled with the Delnas, and we're actually only focusing on it working with Electrostars. I don't know if it will work with the 395s to be honest. So we're focusing on the 375s, and then it'll be interesting again, same as with the railhead treatment train content, is to get your feedback about what you want to see more of. Rail Operations Group do all sorts of hauls all over the country, doing hauling all sorts of different things, and it may be that there's an opportunity then for more of this kind of thing, variations. We're doing the tight lock coupler and so forth. In future packs as alternative bits of gameplay as well. So yeah, let us know what you think and whether it's something that you want to do. The white 375 is a fully drivable train, yes, Ben.
Yeah, so all of these are scenarios for the routes as well as I would imagine, Matt, and you could probably confirm this, they would sub on to those routes as well as part of your day-to-day usage of the route.
Yes.
Yep. Cool. So the one question that's been asked a few times in the chat is around the 37 having new sounds.
No.
Question mark.
So.
So it's more of a kind of a modelling and functionality update rather than an audio update.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone been looking at it from an audio perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Anything else on the Loco add-on bundle? As I said, we would like to be able to give you a little bit more sort of showcasing of the visuals of this and give you a little bit of gameplay as well. That'll come a little bit later down the line. But is there anything else at this stage you want to talk about, Matt?
So someone said which routes are the new ICEs made for? So they're made for Castle Würzburg to encourage the variety on that route. But obviously you can use them wherever you want to. It's an ICE 100 and ICE 3. Go all sorts of places. And I just want to also say that the ST70 ACE, we looked at that one because when we did the F7 Santa Fe and one of the previous Loco packs, it was the number one thing people said, I wish it was an SD70 ACE and BNSF livery. And so it's kind of like, well, next time we do a Loco pack, we need to do that then. And I'm really hyped to see the BNSF fleet expanding now in Transit World. So it's good to get a bit more pumpkin in the game.
Can never have too much pumpkin. Okay, as I say, we'll have a little bit more information about all of these, whether they're UK, US, or the German pieces of content going into the coming weeks as well. So don't worry if we haven't answered all of your questions tonight. We'll do our best to make sure you've got as much information as you can before it releases. Okay, let's go back to 2Cams. I think that might be the last of the slideshows for this evening. So we are back onto 2Cam, I think, for the rest of the stream. So you can see our wonderful faces in a little bit bigger than they were beforehand. One important thing to note is that everything that we just talked about, so that is the Linke Rheinstrecke, Niddertalbahn, Midland Main Line, Loco Add-on Bundle 2, and the West Cornwall Local Steam Railtour, are all planned at the moment to be releasing before the next roadmap launches. So we'll have quite a lot of stuff coming out in terms of content, in terms of live streams and all that kind of stuff over the course of the next few weeks. So we'll be sharing when we have things like confirmed release dates and all of that sort of thing as well. For that content, we'll be sharing it with you as soon as we can. So quite a lot going on, Matt. Obviously, what that's I guess the question that players would ask is, so that all that stuff's coming out, what are we doing to kind of help improve the core game alongside this? And there's a few things obviously we wanted to talk about tonight. We mentioned earlier around the Edinburgh-Glasgow patch that went live earlier today. All full details of what that's all about are on our forums, and if our helpful mods are able to stick the link in the chat, that would be wonderful, just so that everyone can see if they want to. We did include most of the fixes, I believe, or most of the improvements in the previous roadmap article, but there are a few more that have been added since that time, so it's worth checking out the up-to-date list. But yeah, we're pleased to get that one out. We know that the Rivet team are also really keen to get that one out. So thanks for.
I want to give a big shout out to the Rivet team. Actually, they've been working really hard on getting this, looking at all of your feedback and just soaking it up and sort of saying how can we make this better. And I think the end result is a really good patch actually. So it's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be monitoring your feedback on that over the course of the next couple of days. And obviously, if there's anything that we want to try and improve, we will, of course, be feeding that back to the Rivet team as well. Also mentioned in this month's roadmap is a upcoming patch for the US content that we released a couple of weeks ago. Now, obviously, we know that there's been a lot of feedback for us on a few different areas. And we wanted to try and make sure that we were able to get out something that improved players' experiences over within a reasonable time frame. So we have put together a selection of improvements, everything from the introductions to the AC, SES and the ALP46 being completable, the Sunnyside Yard overhead line improvements, passenger behaviour improvements, a lot of improvements to the bi-level coaches and things like the door behaviour and how they interact with platforms, boosting the brightness of ditch and marker lights, improving the speedometers. I'm just having a quick look at the list, and optimization to improve performance, things like that. There's a full list on the website. That's of Trenton in particular, and then there's a few Acela and Union Pacific Heritage Collection improvements as well. The predominant amount of the improvements are on the Trenton line, and as we've said before, we at the moment don't have plans to include and update the timetable as it stands. That accurate, Matt?
Pretty much sums it up, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, if you want full details, again, the roadmap article is the place to go. Those aren't all of the improvements, but these are the ones we wanted to just kind of pick out. But there'll be a sort of more comprehensive patch notes list when we go live with the update.
I just want to call out as a question coming up over and over from multiple people. There are no plans to add a cab car to the BR101. Just in that. And someone else has asked a number of times, will the ROG 37s layer onto Midland Main Line? I'll check with Skyhook. I don't believe they have that on their plans at the moment, but I will recommend it to them.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on, JD. Sorry.
No, fine. If you see things, please feel free to interrupt me. I could do with not talking for a little while. I'm sure everybody else would agree too. Okay, let's talk about hopefully for the last ever time, Add-ons Manager. Now, Matt's got a little knowing smile.
But it won't be the last ever time.
No, well, okay, fine. But it's out, and
it's out for one of 5 platforms.
Yeah, for PS5, which is the one that we wanted to get it out for specifically. We know the one that we knew players were having the most amount of problems with. Add-ons Manager is live for everybody who is currently playing PS5, which I know we don't want to give ourselves too much of a pat on the back for it, because we know there was a lot of players had a lot of problems for a really long time. But I think we do also have to recognize how much work went into that and actually give ourselves, you know what, we actually, this is something that we are actually really proud of, because it's a bespoke solution that, as far as we're aware, no other games developer has put together, and we basically had to rewrite the entire back-end infrastructure of the whole game to make it so that it worked. And that's no mean feat,
not
is it?
Patting ourselves on the back, I do want to give Ian, Matt, Liam, and others that have worked on Add-ons Manager a massive shout out, because this has been a tremendously difficult job, and they've just been ploughing away and just getting on with it, finding problems, solving problems, and that got us to a pretty smooth release on PS5. Actually, can you consider how much foundational work has been done? And work continues. There's still stuff to be done.
Yeah, we put out a patch on Friday afternoon, which dealt with some of the US content scenarios not working properly. We're also looking at putting out, Matt, you've probably got more information than me on this, but mastery improvements and some localization improvements too.
Yeah, so we've got there are some issues with mastery at the moment. Not the layers not working properly. They have a fix for that. It hopefully gets signed off any time now, and hopefully, so if that is the case, then it could be the next day, 2 days, and then that'll go out for PS5 as an update to bring that mastery fix and localization fix in. So yeah, that's coming together. And then the next sort of focus the team have been working on is PS4, because PS4 users are also having some troubles with their 50 DLC limit. Thanks, Sony. So that's in a pretty good state overall. Actually, it's passing most of its tests, and there's I think 1 or 2 minor things that they're resolving at the minute. So I'm not going to give you a date for it, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be pretty soon now. And then once we've got PS4 out, then we'll turn our attention to Xbox. There's still advancements going on with Xbox in the background. I know we've actually got the Xbox beta team are using it all the time now. So it's getting quite thoroughly exercised, and we'll turn our attention to getting that one productized once we've got PS4 out.
Productized is a good word. Is that a word?
It's just amazing. It is now.
Good. Okay, fine. I like making up words too. So
I do. At least you've got to make up one word a day.
Tutorialization is my favourite.
Yep.
But anyway, back to Add-ons Manager. So obviously we have had a few questions from players who are on Xbox and PC, talking about sort of, well, why do I want Add-ons Manager? It's something that's been designed specifically for PlayStation and PS5 and PS4. What is the benefit to me? And I think there's a couple of answers to that question, and there's also a practicality answer to that question too. So there's performance improvements. So we've seen, it depends on how many add-ons you have installed. The more add-ons you have installed, the more of an impact Add-ons Manager tends to have in terms of improved performance and slightly less crashing. I'm just laughing because Matt sent me a dictionary definition on Teams of productize, so it is apparently a word. And also from a practical standpoint, we can't have 2 different back ends of the game.
Yes.
So we can't operate with 2 different back-end infrastructures to our game.
Given how different they are, it would basically it is 2 separate games now. PC is not running the latest version of the game technically now, so we need to get everything leveled up again.
Absolutely. And finally, just because I know again a few PC players have been talking about things like mods, as part of the beta team and as part of the kind of the way that players play the game, we are going to be making sure that they've had an opportunity to play with Add-ons Manager installed and to see how it impacts things. Now we have been working with modders as well as part of this, to try and make sure, as I say, that there is minimal impact, if any.
Back when we did TSW2, we had we contacted some modders. We also just downloaded a ton of different mods and tested them. So we already know that things were stable with TSW2 on mods for the most part. We did go back to some of the modders with some guidance that some of the things that they were doing were just not going to work and probably should never have worked in the first place. So we came back with some guidance on that stuff. We need to carry on the process. We need to reset that and do it again once we start looking at the PC version of integrating the core into the PC build. And we'll do the same process. We'll engage with download mods, retest them, and if we have any challenges, concerns, questions, because literally sometimes it was, I can't understand why you're doing that. What is it? And there was a good answer, or there wasn't a good answer, or and we'll go through that process. But fundamentally, to this point, it worked pretty fluidly. Actually, it worked really well.
Yeah, and as I say, we'll be monitoring feedback. Just to summarise, then, the order of release will be PS5, PS4, Xbox, PC.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. We don't have timeframes for any of those things yet, but we're hopeful that given the relative smoothness of the release last week, that it's going to be a quicker process rather than a slightly longer process.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Artful asks Epic. Where does Epic fit into this? I assume sort of
alongside PC
with Steam. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk. There was a couple of questions about why did we say that PS4 would launch at the same time as PS5, but hopefully that's answered that question.
The goal was to get PS5 out and nothing to get in the way of getting PS5 out. And essentially, if they had both passed QA at the same time, they'd have both gone out, but PS4 hadn't. And it was running into some problems. So we put it to one side, focus on PS5, get that out as fast as possible. That had much more serious problems for players. PS4 is the next one that has problems, and that's where we're focusing. And we'll put Xbox aside to get on with that, and so on and so forth. It's about prioritization and not being distracted by trying to simultaneously release things unnecessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. Just while we've got a little break, Vion's asked about feedback on Peak Forest development. We don't have any update for you at the moment, but I would imagine we probably drop an update in the next roadmap this time next month.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's progressing well, I'll say that.
Yeah, we've talked about quite a lot already, I think, in this roadmap in terms of content. So I think that should do you, I think, for the next few weeks. Okay. Oh yeah. I'm not sure I can take any more. Let's talk red lights. Hopefully a very quick section, but just to reiterate to everybody, there was a patch that went live. I believe it was towards the start of February, which maybe mid-February actually, which dealt with the core improvement to the pathing and the dispatcher, designed to eliminate at the core of the game some of the problems that players have been seeing with red lights. We've seen some really positive feedback from that so far. There is a forum thread live, actually, if you are still seeing problems that you can raise that on. Basically, we're following a similar process to how we've treated things like derailments and save game, where we've put in a core improvement which we think deals with about 80 to 85% of the known issues that we can see. And it kind of gives us almost like carte blanche. You've got kind of a baseline now of, if that hasn't picked up everything, we've then got sort of a few more here and there that we'll deal with on a case-by-case basis. So if you're seeing anything that's not covered by the current series of improvements, then please let us know on that forum thread, and we'll kind of pick up the pieces and see where they finish. But again, we talked a little bit about Add-ons Manager and kind of that how big a project that was. This isn't an insignificant project either, is it, Matt? This is something that requires quite a lot of investigation, and once something's been improved, a lot of testing to make sure that it's working.
It's about a lot of the fixes too, because this is the fixes that went out covered two areas. One of them was the pathing system, and one of them which would adjust how the trains are routed. So if you can imagine, if suddenly the millions of paths that are across all of the routes and service modes and everything else that are in there, if every train is now potentially taking a different routing, that's very scary. That's very scary. And the dispatcher, which is thinking about prioritization and how it makes decisions when any service is spawned, when you start a service and all the trains get organized. Anything wrong could, all of a sudden you've gone from a problem predominantly on a couple of US routes, really, to every route having a problem. So it's about being really careful in this area. And we've got the bulk testing across every timetable on every route, so that gives us a good idea as to whether or not we've made good steps forward, or taking any steps backwards. And then we big help with the beta testers actually, who hammered through just a wide variety of services across a wide variety of routes and just said, no, I can't noticeably see anything behaving differently, and nothing's working or broken that was working before. So that gave us a good deal of confidence between the care taken with the changes, the bulk testing, and then the specific testing by beta testers, and obviously the QA team worked hard on it as well. So it's so kind of big, delicate changes to make, difficult changes to figure out what to make as well. It took probably a few months, I think 2 or 3 months, I think, for the engineer in question to sort of understand the issue and then come up with the thing, because it wasn't obvious. It wasn't what you'd immediately think it was. It was just down to trains taking different paths depending on where they started. You'd kind of would think they'd carry on with the path that they were going to go on anyway. So that was that careful process. So yeah, it's been difficult, but it seems to be a big step forward actually. So I'm really happy with that work. It doesn't fix every red light, so we're certainly not saying that, but it has made a big difference.
I think we saw quite a marked improvement on things like Harlem, on London Commuter, and some of the more kind of passenger heavy or service heavy routes.
It is more dense routes that you'll see that on. We saw examples even on Paddington, where you'd find that because of where the one, in some cases a 166 had got to, where you started the game, it would, instead of staying on the fast lines, on the slow lines, it would cross over and run wrong line running on the fast lines. And of course, you can imagine that doesn't end well. It doesn't end badly, but it ends up with trains stuck facing each other, and everything just winds down from there. And that was because of the thing that's been fixed here. So this fix has impacted every route, it seems to be positive. So yeah, I'm given confidence by that, but we do need to look through the feedback that you're providing, and carry on essentially with working out what these are. Some of these are going to be content specific things where we need to go back, and same as with some of this other stuff where we now need to start looking at the content specifically, but we're going to keep an eye on it. If we see something like, oh, actually no, that's actually not content, that's actually in the core, then we can go and have a look at those as well. So it's about finding the right solution for these problems.
Yeah, and just while we're on the subject, because you mentioned sort of mass testing, we've not really touched on auto testing for a little while. We talked about, I think, in November, and it's kind of been sort of away in the background, helping us out with a few bits and pieces. How did something like that tie into this work for the red light improvements?
The key thing is, as I said, what it does is that so every night, the test machine updates its copy of the development stream for the entire game and every piece of DLC, and then it resimulates every timetable. So if there's 50, 60 routes, and there's more than that in timetables because some of the Loco packs have added new routes and new timetables and so forth. So let's say it's doing 60 or 70 timetables, and it's going to simulate those from start to finish, and it takes, I would say, 2 days of slogging to go through. And as soon as it finishes, it gets back to the beginning and does it all again, and it's just constantly doing that. So we get this constant picture of anytime we breathe anywhere on something sensitive related to anything that can affect a timetable, within 24 to 48 hours, something's knocking on our doors saying, hang on, this isn't right. And historically, that just wasn't even feasible. That would be we think we've done something that might improve things. Can everybody please give this a really good test? And then obviously you'd test out of 30,000 services, you'd test 50. Because that's reasonably what you can practically do in a sensible timescale. Now we can test all of them, not to the same level as a human playing them, but with an automaton going through and testing them to the same level that they were done when the developer originally built the timetable. They would have run this process and validated at the end of it all of the services completed, and there were no extensive delays anywhere and so forth. And that's what this is doing, is making sure that we continue with that, and we haven't made anything detrimental or made it worse. So it gives us, it's a very, very useful tool. It's a blunt instrument, to be honest. It's just for each timetable, run it. Nothing really particularly clever about it, but the value we get and the confidence we get out of it to actually sort of say, yes, we can now make changes to dispatcher and not worry about the scope of testing.
Yeah, well, it's that confidence, isn't it? Because I think probably, again, don't want to put words in your mouth, Matt, but I would imagine that we probably wouldn't have been confident enough to make those dispatcher changes without having something like the auto testing framework, because the time they would have taken our testers internally to be able to do it, and our beta team as well to be able to do it, is just ginormous. And
well, the changes at that level, if we didn't have the auto tester before, we would have had the auto tester after. It would be a mandatory part of testing that level of
Yeah.
changes is every timetable needs resimulating to prove it still works and we haven't broke anything. And either someone sits there and does it by hand, typing in the console commands and coming back 2 hours later and kicking off the next one, or we write something to do it for us. And as I said, this is not a clever piece of software. This is a fairly blunt instrument piece of software, but it's the power, the value you get out of that is much more worth it.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, we'll put that to one side, and as you say, with the ask of players, if you do come across something that doesn't look right, say it's sorted. But if you see something that doesn't look quite as it should do, then let us know on that forum thread or in the technical reports part of the forum, and we'll try and hoover it up and investigate.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's whiz through a couple of other bits and pieces that we gave an update on in the roadmap. Not a particularly long update, but an update nonetheless. So let's start with the AI SPADs on Spirit of Steam. So Matt, you had a little bit of information for us about the progress of that particular improvement. Not particularly brilliant news, but it's an update nonetheless.
Yeah. So we had a fix, and we put it out to the beta testers, and again, saved the day. They started noticing some other problems across a wide, because the nature of the fix for the AI SPAD was another, everything needs retesting, because it's in core code. And they started looking through, and so we said, okay, go and test a sprinkling of everything. And QA were doing the same. And they found that every route suddenly stopped working properly in minor subtle ways.
That's not good.
So it's kind of okay. And then when we went with the engineering team, then reviewed those issues, and we said, no, that's SPAD fix causing that problem. So we backed it back out, and that is now back with the engineering team for a bit of creative thought to figure out a better solution. So I think they have a handling of what causes this issue. It's just finding a better solution that doesn't come along with the problems with it as well. So it will come soon, but it's not been forgotten for sure. But no, our first attempt didn't work the way we'd hoped it would.
No, and that is part and parcel of game development, isn't it? Really, is that there are things that you try and sometimes these things take 3 or 4 times to get right. And we saw that with Add-ons Manager as well, didn't we? I mean, there were so many different iterations of what that Add-ons Manager ended up looking like. Now, we're not saying for one instance that it's going to take quite as long as Add-ons Manager to get out, but it's that kind of if it touches the core code, it obviously has an impact, and we need to have something that feels like it's robust enough to be able to improve the issue without making anything worse on the other side of the coin.
Well, now, like I said, now we've got some of this auto testing going on, the timetables, and the beta team are just knocking it out of the park, along with our QA team with what they're testing. I feel more confident. I'm really happy that we did that fix. It didn't work. We took it out. That could have gone out had there been any failure there, and because when you test the actual problem, it's fixed. The SPAD problem has gone away. So I'm happy. It proves that the testing is finding the faults, even if they're not obvious, because this was not an obviously linked thing at all. It was almost like pushing a button on here and a light came on over here 3 minutes later, or something daft. It was very strange. So the being able to test that broad range of stuff, see what the issues are, and then engineering review it and say, oh no, actually that's related to this, let me roll it back and see if that fixes it. It did. Right, okay, back to the drawing board. This is the process working essentially.
And I think one of the other things to note with the QA team and the beta team, obviously they have slightly different roles within kind of the way that we do things, as does auto testing. But I think what we really get with the beta team is a real diversity of different types of people who play different types of content.
Yes.
And we have experts in various different things, and people have got different add-ons installed and different combinations of things installed, and it gives us a much broader depth of opportunities to test and investigate things than perhaps if we had just our internal team or just our auto testing. As we've said, nothing can really beat a human being, but as many human beings as you can get is wonderful.
Oh no, absolutely. A beta team. There's experts in all the different regions. There's real trained drivers. There's real infrastructure people. There's all sorts of people on the beta team, and gamers and streamers, and There's all sorts of different, and what they do is they bring that variety of, this is how I play it, this is how I do it, this is what I'm interested in, and I'm bringing that through. So no, it's my biggest love and thanks to the beta team for what they bring. But I also don't want to forget the QA team, because we wouldn't be here without what they do as well. This is a team effort amongst all of us. It's really the process is working well, and again, the fact that a massive change like PS5 Add-on Manager came out is the way that it did is a tribute to that work going well.
So just while we're on the subject of the beta team, a couple of people have mentioned, because I remember us talking about this in a roadmap stream before, actually, about either a public beta or expanding the beta framework to include either more individuals within it or to extend it out to PlayStation. A couple of other areas that we were looking to expand the what's it called, the beta framework. Let's just use the beta again as just a catch-all term. Is there any update on that? So
we've had one advancement so far, and that is now Xbox beta testers can now test pre-release content. So they've been testing Niddertalbahn as a trial of making that work. So that's good. So Xbox testers can now test content before it comes out. Previously, they could only test patches to the content before they came out. So that's good. We've not made any progress on PlayStation front, and the discussion on open beta is back on the table again. Actually, just in the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about it and what we can do to make that happen. So I don't have anything definitive on it yet, but I know that it is something that we are keen to do, yeah, it's about finding the logistics of, well, what is it? How do we get that feedback? How do we use that feedback? What is it that you are going to be testing? What is the build? How do we make that build? We already make so many builds, and this would be another build. So it's just a logistical problem of just making things available. But we've started sort of hashing out what that might look like, and then we can take it from there. But yeah, it's something that we're quite keen to press on with. So if there's news, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and
when there's news, I'll let you know.
It's about providing that kind of feedback opportunity as well, and making it so that it's you've kind of got that sweet spot where, I don't want to use the phrase too many cooks, but there might be an opportunity. There might be a world in which, for instance, if you've got so many people coming in with so many perhaps conflicting different types of feedback, that it ends up being that actually you can have that kind of analysis paralysis, I guess, where you actually maybe wouldn't make any changes or wouldn't do anything because you're getting too many people giving you feedback. So I think there's probably a sweet spot that we need to find.
Well, we do sometimes get that even with the group that we've got at the moment, where you'll get with our internal QA, the outsource two or three different outsource QA agencies that we use, the beta team. Sometimes you'll get sort of 6 reports for the same issue. Multiply that up for the number of issues, and what it does is it creates a lot of work. Now everybody's supposed to check before they log, but that's also incredibly time consuming as well. So it's just a process of managing that. And if we open it up to an open beta, now what we might do, one of the things we talked about is having a semi-open beta to start with, which is inviting a larger group of people into something and then proceeding and then growing it from there, essentially, until, just to prove the concept, rather than just open the floodgates, get drowned and think, oh, that probably wasn't the clever idea. Start and then grow it, and make sure that we've got processes that can cope with it and support it. And actually, we want to also make sure that if you're in part of that process, you're providing feedback that you feel like that's a valuable use of your time as well.
Yeah, and I think a couple of people have asked for in-game feedback. I think the thing that we mentioned beforehand applies in that if you've got everybody submitting feedback of varying different qualities, that can sometimes be more counterintuitive than having a smaller group of people offering more tangible, beneficial feedback. So I think we probably would look to go more along the lines of that kind of semi-open beta scale-up approach than something where actually it's a bit of a free-for-all.
I know that in-game feedback is something that has been talked about. One of the games I play, Subnautica, and that's got a really good system for providing in-game feedback that sort of I'm somewhat inspired by. But that it's then another level of management of that stuff. So whether we get to that as a sort of an ultimate end goal, it's like, well, let's start this process before setting a goal which is going to be too hard to achieve. Let's get going on the process.
I think there's a 1 to 10 scale here, and I think we're probably at midway, I would say. And you've got in-game feedback probably as your 10, and I think probably there's open beta and a few other steps that we need to make before that became a reality.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. And as Train Simulator Driver says, there is also a way to provide feedback that is useful, because sometimes some of the feedback we get, whether it's via forums or support tickets, there's nothing there we can use. It's like, yes, you've told us there's a problem, but I can't do anything with it because.
And it's not the fault of the player either, because we have to think about it in a slightly different way to how a player would be thinking about it. We have to be thinking about sort of, okay, so what weather were you in? What service were you using? Was there anything that passed you as you went through? We have to kind of think about it in a slightly different way to how a player would, which is, my thing doesn't work, or this thing didn't operate, or whatever while I was driving. So it's about kind of that mentality shift as well.
Yeah, and that's really the crux of the issue is making sure that we have a way to ask you to provide your feedback in a way that allows you to give us the information we need.
Yeah.
Without also then saying you need to fill in a 50-page form to fill in a bug saying that tree's floating 3 inches off the ground. It's finding the right balance with the right information, and this is what we're looking at the technical aspects to work out, get a build, put it available, and then the sort of logistical aspects of then, well, let's get some people on it and start building that process out. So
I'm looking forward to seeing our support tickets tomorrow morning, where 200 people have submitted a bug about a tree being 3 inches suspended from the floor. So you have been warned, guys. Watch it. All right. Okay. Let's put that to one side then. Let's talk a little bit about a few other bits and pieces that we haven't really had a chance to talk in much depth about in the roadmap article. So HST functionality for Livery Designer. Now, I think we said in the roadmap it was in the final stages of testing. Any updates, Matt?
I haven't seen any updates on that one. I've following our discussion getting this, so I'm going to check in with the release management and work out where we're at with which build we're planning on actually getting it into, because I'm not aware of there being any new issues raised on it. So it's probably in the queue now. I'm waiting for a tack onto a build to go out.
Okay. And one of the things which is becoming a regular feature of the live stream is me asking you, Matt, TSW2 updates, where are they?
They're stuck in a queue as well. It's in the same situation as it's been before. We're still committed to getting them out, but this again. I use the word logistics far too many times in this stream, clearly. But there is more logistical issues just because of the scale of all of the projects that need to be rebuilt on the old TSW2 systems, and we're just working through scaling systems up to be able to. I think we've got 9 build servers and we need more. It's crazy. When we started, we had 1, so it's getting us to the point where we can get all of that build. So it's not forgotten. It will happen, but I'm not going to put any kind of a time on it at the moment because I would probably be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously a fair amount of cynicism in the chat, and I think that's understandable given that it's been
totally justified.
6 months. All I would say is there was the same level of cynicism around Add-ons Manager, and we did manage to get that out to PlayStation 5 players.
Yep.
It did take a little while, but we did get it out eventually. And myself and Matt are going to keep banging the drum about getting it out, and trying to make sure that we get it in a position where you folks who are playing TSW2 have got the updates. Now, again, I know that there was a discussion about some of the existing things that have gone into recent improvements, also being therefore sort of qualifying for TSW2. Now, I don't quite know what does and what doesn't include, but I think perhaps, Matt, it would be sensible for when we do have that update go live is to be able to incorporate, hey, you know what, all of the fixes from this patch 3 weeks ago also part of this improvement too. But as I say, until we pull those builds together, we don't quite know the exact extent of the updates, but it's going to be more than what was launched with TSW3 in August.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think it'll be a chunky update.
Yeah. Okay. Peninsular Corridor and Oakville passenger services, layer missing, etc., etc. We've talked about it before. We know it's a UI problem. Why that hasn't been visible, and it's my fault. I should have put it on the roadmap because it is something that is being worked on and is being looked at. I should have put it in the special projects team section, and I forgot this time round. There was quite a lot to include. I do apologise, but it is still being worked on. And Matt, is Oakville also included in that tranche as well?
I think they were basically Peninsular Corridor and Oakville were held up by the same route issue where they couldn't be resimulated, which I believe is resolved. And now Peninsular Corridor is held up on a UI issue, which is what's causing it to where you can't the services on the MP36 aren't totting up correctly, and the cab car, you're not getting the full range of services. So that once that's resolved, and then it's this because the passenger services use the same trains, they all kind of intermix together. But yeah, it is it's on the table to be looked at.
Yeah. Cool. And then finally, BL187 audio. Now I know Adam's team are currently tasked with looking at this, working with the Skyhook team to improve that. Do we have an update?
I don't have an update on that one, no, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can get something more tangible for you next time round, so that we can provide a little bit more context. Actually, there was a question about the fact that it was just the two of us on these live streams quite often now, and actually maybe we do need to bring a couple of other people onto the stream on occasion, if nothing else, just to freshen it up a little bit. So I'm going to see if what we can do in the coming months about bringing some familiar and some slightly newer faces onto the roadmap live streams, even if it's just to talk about a very specific element of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Give people a chance to tell you what they do.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, again, you kind of know what we do by this point. It'd be nice to be able to.
What we do at this point, probably.
Yeah. What are we? An hour and 20 minutes in, and we're still going. So, okay, we have a little update for you on some of the partner program bits and pieces. Obviously, we've touched on Skyhook, we've touched on TSG, we've touched on Skyhook. Rivet, that's the other one. And just another quick note on TSG, obviously the 420 a couple of people have asked about already as well. That's still in the same place it was beforehand. Obviously the TSG team have been working quite heavily on Niddertalbahn, and I imagine that they'll continue work on the 420 after the release window has passed for Niddertalbahn.
I'm not sure what the TSG's plan is when they get back onto what they're busy. They were going. I know Mike is still dead keen to get the 420 through, and the other projects he's talked about as well. But he's got. Mike is a very busy person, and creating some really amazing content. You've got Mike to thank for the setup on the BL103, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. We worked with them really closely with some of the German content recently. So, as I say, we've used them as an internal resource as well as obviously the work that they're doing externally too. So just a couple of other bits and pieces. These are in the roadmap. I'm just going to read them verbatim just so that everybody has the chance, if they haven't read the roadmap yet, to find out a little bit more. Just Trains, they're in the process of reviewing the scenery, or we're in the process of reviewing some of the scenery that they've put in there, and we've also linked them into all the auto testing framework as well, that we were talking about previously. They're well underway with scenario and content development, and obviously this is brilliant news. They're making some really good progress. We're still a little while off being able to give more details of what that content is, and what you can expect from it. From Alan Thompson's simulations, track's been laid for the first route, and we're kind of reviewing that in its early stages at this stage by the special projects team, so Adam's team, and they're also getting some training on creating some gameplay in Train Sim Worlds. And then Union Workshop are in the early stages of developing their track system for their content too. So all still quite early, and again, once we have more information for you on any of that stuff, of course, we'll talk about it in either a stream like this, or we'll announce it, or we'll announce more details when we have more for you.
It's worth clarifying actually that this reviewing that we're talking about here is providing, looking at what they've done, providing advice on based on our experience of where it might run into problems of performance later on. Because one of the super fun things with Unreal is you can make these super detailed things, which then are going to run into problems later on, and so we can just provide advice on that stuff. And just what I don't want to do, just as Niddertal has benefited from, is try and cramp anyone's style. If they want to have their own style, do their own thing, their own way, I'm all in favour of that. But we have a lot of experience now in releasing content, with TSW across all the platforms, and we know bitterly what works and what works less well and what doesn't work at all, and where they're going to run into problems later on. So it's kind of, this is a good opportunity for us, and they're keen for our support on this stuff. One of the things that we're trying to do with all third parties is just provide that advice, feedback, and say, actually, well, you could do, if you do this a different way, you'll find that you won't have problems later on, or these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, and just kind of related to that, was a question that I was going to ask a little bit later on, Matt, but you kind of engaged with a thread on the forums around standardized features for a route in Train Sim in Train Sim World, and obviously that applies to our partners as well, in terms of the content that was going. We saw with Edinburgh-Glasgow that perhaps that the wires got a little bit crossed in some of those. At what point in the development do we kind of share that? Is it very much a very early stages thing where we say, well, actually, you know what, these kinds of things need to be included to be considered a TSW3 route, for instance, or is it something that actually happens a little bit further down the line because we don't want to hamstring their creativity early on in the process?
So the checklist doesn't hamstring creativity. The checklist is the top level standard features people have come to expect. And just one big shout out to everyone in that thread who's been contributing some great ideas. They are helping me extend that so that I can make sure this checklist is meeting sort of the standards that you're all expecting.
Do you have a couple of examples of things that are
for example, all safety systems should, so in the drivable vehicle functionality section, all safety systems should default to off, or if required for the route to be usable, they need to be in a state that requires no player interaction, so passive. So in which case, it's like the access telling you what's going on, but not penalizing if you get it wrong. AWS being off. Now, I know that that's going to trigger a bunch of people that want the safety systems on by default. That's a separate problem. At the moment, the standard is for everything to be off. But all supported safety systems should be able to be toggled on using the keyboard, the mouse, and the controller. Vigilance systems should be toggleable using Shift-Enter using the keyboard, and other safety systems toggleable with Control-Enter when using the keyboard. So, and all safety systems should be interactable with keyboard, mouse, and controller. These kinds of things. And then, some add-ons lately, one of the more recent add-ons had combined to where I think it was Control-Enter did everything. So you couldn't have AWS without DSD, without DVD. So you had the annoying beeper, but if you wanted AWS. Now, I know a number of people I've spoken to want AWS, but find the annoying vigilance device just annoying, and I don't want it. So that this is why we make sure it's separated. So we caught that, and we were able to get that one split out. And this is where the checklist is starting to make sure that we're keeping the functionality even. And there are some levels of personal creativity that shouldn't happen. Because if, say, for example, an add-on developer wanted to swap the A and the D keys because they thought that D key should be for accelerate and the A key should be for decelerate, that would create enormous confusion amongst players. So that wouldn't be allowed. But if they want to do other interesting things in the cab or in the routes, that's great. And what we'll do then is, what part of this process we're developing will mean that if someone is outside of this process or with this checklist because they've done something new, like TMS, for example, then what we would then do, and we haven't yet done this for something like TMS, but what we would then do is then create effectively an addendum checklist, which says, right, well, what is TMS and what should it be? Because if we're going to do it, let's make sure it's the same thing going forwards. And there's always the opportunity to expand that because you want to add more functionality, but it shouldn't be something which is then inconsistent, variable, and all over the place. So it's trying to make sure that that these things are tested and working. And it would have if that had been in there and that challenge had gone out, it would have meant that we would have challenged whether or not you could interface with these touchscreens on the TMS with a controller, which turned out to be a problem on console. So it's like, this is where this process can help refine these things going forward. A Red Leader makes the points about rail driver buttons being different across everything. And I don't know how that's happened, but one of the things that I'm going to put into these checklists, I'm actually going to define what the buttons should be, which ones are allowed to be flexible per train, where the standard. So the PZB buttons will always be in the same place, because it's really surprising that they've ended up all over the place. Well, not surprising. Everyone works on a train, and if you look at it as a channel down which you develop one train after the next, and other people develop them, then people come up with different ideas. If it isn't documented like this, then this is how this happens. So I'm going to start putting this documentation in process. One of the challenges is going to be unifying it on the older content, though, because people have got used to where it's wrong, and now if I change it, I'll break them. So I kind of need to think about how we resolve that going forwards. But it is a problem. It is a thing which needs to be specified, and then you can test against it. And again, just as in with the TRC, what they call TRCs, and the XRs, what they're called on the different console platforms, that's just the console version of it, which we have to comply with. If something doesn't comply, there is always the opportunity to have a discussion about it and say it's not relevant for this route. So this isn't everything must fit into this exact sized box. It's, if it doesn't, let's talk about it and make sure that's valid, rather than it just slipping through the net. So this provides a lot of control, a lot of consistency, but it doesn't hamstring anybody. So it's a really good process. It works brilliantly for the console platforms. And so we're developing that now across route content, train gameplay packs, and across Loco content, so that we can make sure that we have that level of consistency.
Crazy Killers just going to say, JD's like, I don't understand any of this. There are so many acronyms that you use there, Matt, that I was just like,
I can't remember what TRC and XR stand for, to be perfectly honest. Basically, they are ways the console platforms can say, no, bad, do it again. And so, but it's just certification checklists. It's a set of things. If you do this, one of the common ones in the consoles is, if you pull the controller out, the game shouldn't break. If you plug the controller back in again, it should get back to working again. And actually, it's very easy, if you don't think about that, to write code accidentally where you pull the controller out and suddenly it's throwing null pointer exceptions anywhere and crashes because it was having a handle to a controller. So this is why they put these things in there, to make sure that all of the things that can go wrong in a real environment that the players have had, building on their experience. And this is just a series of tests they run, and we're just building a series of tests that effectively a service at a similar level, but for all of the content that we make. So it's just a checklist.
Yeah, cool. It sounds great, and consistency is the key thing here, really. I think, because I think we've seen with a couple of the releases that have come out in TSW3 over the last few months, there have been some discrepancies where things have appeared in certain add-ons and not in others. So it's a good thing for us to be able to bring out this checklist and make it something that is adhered to, or at least, as I say, by and large adhered to, with some perhaps exceptions when we've discussed them and we know what the challenges are involved with them, so that, as again, players know what to expect with a piece of content that's been released.
Absolutely. I've just mentioned Triple J actually as well, but Triple J said, is the opportunity still open to send me private mods that we can that we think might we want to test against the Add-ons Manager? Yes, please do.
Yeah,
I will add them to the pool, and as long as I've got details, don't just throw me a pack file with no information. But send me stuff, and I'll make sure it goes into the pool of stuff that gets looked at.
Cool. And before we go into some player questions then, and guys, this is your cue in the chat to throw some questions at us. Again, we're not going to answer anything tonight which is like, hey, when is this coming, or is this on the roadmap? Because in theory you should already know the answer to that question. We're going to try and talk a little bit more about more general bits and pieces, and some top level stuff. You've already heard us talk a little bit about betas, and talk a little bit about auto testing, and talk a little bit that kind of thing, really, where we can go into a little bit more detail and we can explain the thought processes and all that kind of stuff is much more useful, I think, to everybody than us saying, No, that's not on the roadmap. But one more thing just before we get into that, so get ready your questions in the chat. We've got a couple already that we'll be asking from the forum thread that we put out earlier. There is an update to London Brighton, Matt, as well, that you wanted to just flag, which isn't in the roadmap. It's hot off the press from this evening, I think.
Yeah, I was talking to the build manager or dev director, and he was telling me that there's been reports since earlier in the year that London Brighton, following an update, took a step backwards in its reliability, particularly on console platforms, and so the team have been working along that one and in the background trying to figure out what's going on there. Quite difficult to reproduce. If any of you are happen to be software developers and you know the expression, race condition and thread safety, you'll know what I mean in terms of how hard those things. Those are the nasty bugs. It's where two things might happen, and if you get two lightning bolts that happen in the same place, the game crashes. You know, how often does two lightning bolts happen? It's very difficult to reproduce those kinds of issues, but they were able to reproduce it thanks to the help we got from the community and from the beta team, figure out what the problem was, and we have a fix in test. Oh, words, they're not working tonight. We have a fix in test potentially for rollout next week.
Good news. Yeah, good news. As I say, always London. I know London Brighton is a much loved route. So anything again we can do to improve that, then is always a winner in my book. And two lightning bolts does not sound fun. Can I just say?
Neither is a thread safety issue, trust me.
So just gathering a few questions as you're answering that one, Matt. So we've got a few in the bank already, but I'm going to go through some player questions. This is our Q&A section. Probably do about 15-20 minutes worth of questions tonight. Just want to try and make sure, as I say, that we're trying to keep it like to the point. We've not really done that so far, so we'll try our best to just answer as much as we can. Question around. Oh, so there was a question that I grabbed from the forums around scenario planner formations. Why can and can't you use certain vehicles together as it stands?
So one of the things that and there's a really good forum thread that someone kicked off about it, or I kicked off about it. There was a discussion on my charity stream actually. Thank you to everybody who.
Oh yeah,
who
we need to.
Yes. Donated.
Yeah, we need to.
Grand
we need
total,
to say.
by the way, is 3,050. Really happy with that. Thank you very much, everyone. But we had this. One of the things we were talking about on the stream was the question that came up was why can't I have a 31 with coaches in the scenario planner? It's just a really basic request, and there's a really boring but valid answer for that, which is they're in different packages. Obviously, the coaches are going to be in something like Northern Transpennine or the Diesel Legends pack, and the and 31's obviously in the 31 pack. And then, of course, the thought is, well, hang on, we got 31 with coaches in the Diesel Legends, but that's because it's part of a scenario or a timetable where they can specify protection to make sure packages are loaded that are needed in time. Scenario Planner doesn't have that option because it's being done on the fly. We now have the ability to specify dependencies within the formation itself. So one of the things that the thread is discussing is, because creating formations is a manual process. We have to create every formation one at a time. So it's kind of like, well, what would you like to see first? 31 with coaches, clearly, but what else? So it's kind of like, there's a good discussion going on there. Go and find the thread and kick in some of your thoughts about what kind of formations you'd like to see. There's always really good options in there, and I'm not going to promise when these things will come out, but we're just going to start ticking away, creating some formations in the background, and hopefully at some point you'll start seeing some of this stuff coming out. And what it'll do is it'll allow you to start using a broader variety of your collection together. It should be. It should enable us to resolve that. So I'll keep the discussion going. If you keep contributing ideas, and we can just keep giving you updates how we get going.
Yeah, Matt kind of brushed over the fact that he did was it 2 11-hour streams over the course of a weekend?
2 12-hour streams.
2 12-hour streams. Sorry, sorry, Matt. For Special Effect, which one of our company charities for this year, we're delighted to be able to work with them. They do a load of brilliant work for accessibility, and Ray, I think the total was about £3,000, wasn't it, to be able to
3,050 is what I looked at earlier on this morning,
which is amazing.
So
massive clap for Matt. for raising some amazing money, which is going to go to a brilliant cause. But it does segue nicely onto a question that Alpha's asked around that charity stream, around accessibility ideas, and whereabouts to go to if they have accessibility ideas or things that they're finding difficult with our games.
Yeah, so Moggy's actually posted a link to a thread earlier on in the chat. Maybe Moggy can repost that.
I'll chuck it in there.
Could so there's talk to the put in a and what I'm particularly keen on is direct experiences, and the key thing to remember with accessibility is it's about making the game more accessible for people that are struggling to play the game. Some people have taken that to be, I don't want the HUD. I don't want these things. That's about making the game harder, not easier. And that's fine. That's a valid thing to ask for, but that's not what accessibility is. So accessibility is might be completely against actually what the hardcore audience is looking for, because it's about making things more obvious. And there's some really cool sort of research I've seen about that some of the stuff other games have been doing. It's been really helping me to hear your stories about what's a challenge for you. The reason that the signal lights, I've said this story a number of times, the reason that the upcoming signals on the HUD have got the little marks inside them now, the vertical, the slash and the dash, for it is because a friend of mine who was completely monochrome colorblind couldn't play the game because he couldn't see what the signals were. Because red, yellow, green are grey, grey, and grey to him. So putting those in meant that suddenly the game became playable. Such a trivial change, and yet it's unlocked the game for him. So it's trying to work out all of, what are those things? Somebody else was talking about dyspraxia on the forums, and all of a sudden it made me just realise the importance of the keyboard. It sounds like such an obvious thing when you look back on it and you realize it, but actually, if you have difficulty with precision controls of something like a mouse, we're really privileged with the fact that we have good control of our limbs and our hands, and we can operate a mouse or a joystick with precision. But if you can't, you just want to press a button, and have it do the thing you want to do. And so anywhere a train has a function where you have to use the mouse because we haven't put a key on that function, on a mandatory thing that you need to do. And one of the key examples that I've asked the team to fix up on going forwards is the brake release keys on trains. So if there's anything you need to fix, then or need to press to do, then those need to be mapped on keys. And then ideally everything should be mapped to be remappable to a key, even if we don't assign it to a key, so that when you come to it, you can then assign keys to things that are important to you, to whatever keys are on your system. Because some accessible gaming systems have got big buttons and so forth, which are not much easier to press, and you can just map it to those things in that case, because they just look like keyboard to us. We don't have to provide special hardware support for that. Now, the other crazy killer talks about custom controller support. We have got options we're looking at for custom controller. I'm not going to go into any detail on it because we're not there yet, but that is another element of investigation. So there's tons of stuff that we can do.
Yeah.
And the key thing for me is just hearing your stories, understanding what's struggle for you. I'm talking to somebody who is legally blind on Discord and how they play the game, and that's fascinating. It's this kind of thing. I want to hear all of your stories. I want to understand that so that I can then put forward pitches and ideas to the board for how we take the game forward in ways which are beneficial, but also make sure we don't make it any worse. Make sure that we don't add new things which make it actually less accessible, just so that we can keep things moving forward. So please do keep communicating, sharing. If you don't want to share it publicly, please send me a message privately. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, I think the really important thing to note there is that obviously we cannot empathise with what some of you at home will be experiencing when you play the game. Only you know how you play the game and the challenges that you come across. So if you are finding those challenges, then please let us know, because it might be something that feels really, really obvious, but it's something that, because obviously we play the game in a certain way, or we design the game in a certain way, because we aren't because we have the benefit of being able to kind of, I guess, play in the way that we've designed the game to be played, then we are not able to perhaps recognize some of those things. So please enlighten us. We'd love to know more about your stories.
Yeah, wide open to be educated,
Yeah.
wide open to it, because recognise that we have a very limited, privileged view of the sort of an ideal world, and most people don't live in that. You know, it's or a lot of people don't. So how we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a question. There was an interesting question about pre-order discounts. I don't think I'm going to be able to give you a very comprehensive answer with this, but the question was, how do you talk about? Can you talk about the context for decisions around pre-order incentives and what routes and locos get sort of incentives on which platforms? And I don't think that's something that I'm going to be able to answer for you tonight. I don't think there's going to be something that we might not be able to answer at all, really, because it's commercially sensitive stuff. But we are in constant dialogue with the platforms. We have good relationships with PlayStation, with Xbox, and with Steam. If not, we wouldn't get into the amount of sort of sales and opportunities that we do. And we do want to try and make sure that if we're asking you, for instance, to say pre-order a game, there is a reason for you to have that faith in us that you're enjoying the content. So that there's work going on, and there's discussions being had for each of the releases that we put out. But in some instances it's possible, some instances not possible, and can't really go into the details on that one. Okay. BB.
So I saw a question earlier on from a few people asking about clarity about Union Workshop and what does track system mean?
Okay.
Track system, Union Workshop probably doing something in Asia. Track probably looks different in Asia, possibly even meter gauge or something, or 3-foot gauge, 3'6". I don't know. It probably isn't the track that we have in the game. So the width of the rails apart, what the sleepers look like, what the track clips look like, all of that stuff. So what they will be doing is a similar journey that Rivet went on when they did the Arosa line, where they had to make the narrow gauge track work and get junctions rendering correctly and all of this stuff. It's really flexible system, a lot more flexible than TS Classic's one, because we learned from what TS Classic could do and built something that was a step above that, more flexible for what we wanted to do. But it still takes time to learn how to do that, to get the benefit out, the best out of what you can do with it, practice it, and then try it out. So I don't know where they're at in terms of using that track system, but developing the track system means making track that they can start laying, essentially.
Yeah. Cool. There were a couple of questions about UI bits and pieces that I grabbed from the forum thread, which were one of them is around why does the text selection menu still show new highlighted on most? I mean, PS5, I think because of Add-ons Manager might have had a few updates to this perhaps, but why is some of the selection menu content still saying new quite a significant amount of times after that is not new anymore?
So they're supposed to stop being new after some number of hours, either 5 or 8 hours of the game being active. Yeah, so if the game has been active 5 hours or 8 hours, whichever one it ends up being, then that new tag should go away. But I've been learning today a little bit about how it calculates that. I have a sneaky suspicion that might be where the problem is. So I'm going back to the team and I'm going to find out. In fact, I'm probably going to this evening. I know what to look for now, so I'm going to run a test on PlayStation 5 and see whether or not it's essentially it calculates or it records how much time you've been in the game when the game shuts down. Console games rarely shut down; they are terminated.
I bet that's probably that feels like
they are terminated. So, and I suspect that's where the issue is. But I'm going to try and prove that. And if that's the case, it's probably quite easy to fix. So I will do a quick test and feed that back to the team, and then they can look at it. So that's where I think that problem lies. I might be completely off base, but digging into it, we'll find, and we'll let you have an answer.
Okay, cool. And the grayed out UI selection, I know we've talked about that a couple of times on previous roadmap live streams. Has there been any progress with that at all?
Remind me which one that is.
So when you're selecting things and when it's highlighted, it's a grey highlight, which doesn't really show up very well. I know we had a conversation and it proved to be a bit more of a complicated thing than it looked because it changed quite a few things in the back end.
We're all over the place. Literally talking about it this week.
Oh, were we? Okay, I didn't know that.
And I had a conversation with the UI team this week still about this. It's one of these discussions that just continues bubbling on in the background, and we're all like, "That's really nice." In that one situation, that breaks everything else, and it's kind of so the discussion is ongoing on that one. So there's some interesting ideas being discussed, and I think we're homing in on a solution, but nothing to improve yet. It's it is a bit strange that we ended up with the dark color being the highlight, but there you go.
Okay, cool. There was a question about impossible golds. Is there? So this feels like it because we raised I think there was a thread that was created that pulled together like a list of things that were being that weren't currently able to get golds for. Or gold medals for. Thank you to the original poster, by the way. It sounds like they've been able to pull together quite a lot of information from people. Yeah. Do we have a kind of an update on that at all? Because I know that we spoke before we went live on the stream, Matt, and it seemed like it was more of a less case-by-case basis improvement and more of a kind of a core improvement thing.
Yeah, so we've traced that one down to the thing that does the estimated score calculations, and it seems to have an issue which results in it overestimating certain types of things. Now, if you've got lots of passenger stops, that makes up for it, more than makes up for it. But if you don't have many passenger stops, like you're moving a train from a depot to a yard, or from a depot to a platform, or a short distance or short freight route, it's more likely to be susceptible to this problem. So working out the best solution to it, because one option is fix the estimator and then re-simulate every single timetable. Doesn't feel like the best solution. So we're looking at what the right way to resolve that one is.
But yeah, it's still we're not in a position where like that's going to be solved. I would say anytime soon. It probably requires a lot of sort of back end work to work out first of all how we want to do it, then actually implement it, then test it, then get it out.
Yep.
Okay, cool. The other question that I grabbed from the forums for tonight. Thanks everybody, by the way, for your questions on the forums or on the chat tonight. We don't get a chance to ask every single one of them, but hopefully you'll have got a flavour and got some useful information, even if we haven't directly answered your specific question. Polaris Neo asks, what's happening about Bidstack in game? There's obviously the kind of dynamic advertising that is used in game to promote certain products, makes the game feel a bit more realistic. It means that we don't use sort of the albeit very good posters that the art team and the creative team put together, but it's not perhaps been operating as intended recently.
It hasn't been operating as intended since launch. I've got to be honest.
I can see you're feverishly typing away, Matt. Is that?
No, I'm making notes of another question I saw.
Right.
Before I forget it. No, this has been a really, really weird process. As far as we can tell, it's all implemented correctly, but we're just not getting any adverts coming down. And that's with Bidstack at the moment to figure out what's going on. It's not progressed, so I will repoke to try and progress that one, but it's struggling to make any progress on that.
Okay, cool. You said you noted a question down. Do you want to throw that one in the mix?
Yes, AI trained PIS problem.
Yes, that was my last question that I was going to ask.
Stolen it. So yeah, Adrian just asked that. In fact, a few people have asked that one. So yeah, I was in touch with the team. They were looking into it. I checked in earlier on before the stream. They haven't got an update for me. So I don't have an update for you, I'm afraid. So I will try and find out why and see what we can do. Because the last time I spoke to them, it sounded like they were angling onto thinking of where it might be, and I think it's related to the same sort of problem, which meant that on NJT, you know how the pantographs will get stuck down, which is fixed now. Of course, will be fixed in the patch. I think the PIS is related to a similar sort of problem with that, where when the train streams out, because it's too far away. When you then see it and it streams in, it doesn't initialize properly and PIS isn't then set up, which is what was happening with the pantograph. I think it's probably about that, something like that, and I think that's where they were looking. So I might be off base again. I'm not qualified to be commenting on that stuff, but that's where I think it is, and I will do my best to get an update.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly as well, just because you mentioned the Panto on New York Trenton, that's not actually on the patch list at the moment. But if you're saying that it's fixed, Matt, I believe you, and I will include it on the patch list.
Yeah, it was when I checked it.
Yep.
I checked all the pantographs.
Because I know that was mentioned.
It was a major bugbear of mine. As soon as we did that, we did the preview stream for it, and we saw all the pantographs stuck down. It was straight onto the team. What's going on here? What's going on here? And the next time I tested the patch, it was all fixed. Okay. But I know it isn't noted in any of the patch notes that I've seen either. But it was all working fine for me. So
okay. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that one and just give it another once over, just to make sure that we're all good with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks everybody again. All your questions. We are pretty much all done for this evening. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for enjoying the nice, pretty pictures, but also listening to us waffle on and talk for a little while as well. Hopefully you found it interesting when we've been talking about some of the things that have been going on, and some of the rationale and the thought processes involved in what we do. I'd love if anybody does enjoy this kind of thing to just kind of take some of this stuff and sort of absorb it, and make sure to say that if you're kind of thinking about the game, if you're thinking about the team, if you're thinking about the development of the game, that you're bearing these things in mind as well, because as I say, we're not like, this is the reality of where we're in. This is some of the things and the challenges that we have to kind of get through on a daily basis. And yeah, that's our job. That's what we do. But it is really great to be able to talk about some of this stuff a little bit more openly with you all. And it's great to be able to hopefully have your understanding and your consideration for the kind of when things go really well, but also when things perhaps don't go quite as well as we would like them to. Just to quickly summarise, it's admin time, everybody. We are, I know, bet you thought you got away with it tonight. So we are, our kind of key headline bits and pieces from the roadmap this time round. We are releasing Linke Rheinstrecke, Mainz, Koblenz. We've got the live stream preview for it on Thursday, and that will be with Lucas, Matt, and Alex. So if you're interested in that, there's also a forum thread to ask questions, requests, all that kind of stuff for the stream. So make sure you check out that. And if you've got any particular things you want to ask, please feel free to ask it on that thread. We also talked a little bit about Niddertalbahn. We talked about West Cornwall Local Steam Railtour. We talked about Midland Mainline. We talked about Loco Add-on Bundle 2. Those will all hopefully be out in your hands by the time the next roadmap happens. I'm not going to absolutely 100% promise it, but that's the plan. And we also talked about a little bit about Add-ons Manager. We talked a little bit about the red light issues, some auto testing bits and pieces, Edinburgh-Glasgow patch, US content patch. We talked about special projects bits and pieces, a little bit about HST, TSW3 update, Peninsular Corridor, AI SPADs for Spirit of Steam, some of the partner program summaries, and some of your questions. So if you've come in late to the live stream and any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, make sure you watch the VOT. We're going to timestamp it tomorrow morning. And I think that's pretty much everything, really. I am going to go and have a lie down, I think. It is past my bedtime after all. But thanks very much, Matt, for joining me tonight. How excited are you for the next few weeks?
It's going to be such a busy period, and there's lots of different trains, lots of different experiences. There's just so much different stuff to look forward to, and some really iconic stuff as well, with like the 158 and BL103 and so forth. So there's just fun times, very fun times.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you're all looking forward to it at home as well. We'll be back. I mean, Matt will be back on Thursday, perhaps in a driving capacity, whilst Alex and Lucas do a lot of the talking. But we'll be back very, very soon, back this time next month for the roadmap, but you'll probably see me on a live stream before then. Hope you have a lovely evening, everyone, and we will see you soon. Have a good one.